Welcome back to another video, guys. Of course, we are working on the Mini Cooper S again, and today we are removing the front subframe. Now, why are we removing the front subframe? Well, I'll show you closely what it looks like at the moment. It's pretty rusty. It is a common issue for these front subframes to rust, and as I have the engine out, obviously we're doing a full engine rebuild, as I have the engine out, it makes sense to remove the front subframe now. Obviously you can remove it with the engine still in, but it just makes it easier with the engine out. If you are planning on removing the front subframe with the engine in and your car still assembled, essentially what you need to do is remove the front bumper, the front crash bar, and then you will essentially be in the same stage that I'm in right now. But without further ado, let's get cracking. Okay then, so here is how we are looking. As you can see, front subframe is pretty rusty, especially on these uprights here. I guess all of the salt and the grime, makes its way through the wheel arches and really attacks these. And yeah, as you can see, this is where it actually bolts onto the chassis of the car. So yeah, you don't want this to fail on you right here. It is known for this to crack around here, so it's not something that you want to happen. So essentially the plan is going to be to remove this, take it back to the bare metal, give it a fresh coat of paint with some rust protector, and that should ensure that it's going to be good for years to come. We're also going to be replacing the suspension components as well. So of course, the two wishbones, we've got new drop links, we have new track rods and track rod ends, and I'm also going to be replacing those bushes at the back as well. But yeah, let's get started in the removal. So of course, because the subframe needs to drop down and the exhaust is in the way, I think what I'm going to do is drop this exhaust down quite a bit more just so it has the clearance. Now there is two hangers at the front just here. I have already disconnected those, so I think it's just resting on that center support brace in the middle there. So I'm going to unbolt that, and then the entire exhaust should drop down to the floor then, I think. Okay then, so it looks like it's just had in by 6 10mm bolts. So we'll get those removed now. This exhaust is probably going to want to drop once I remove this bolt. Yep. As we can see, the exhaust has dropped down to the floor now, so that should be more than enough clearance that we need to get this subframe removed. Next thing I'm going to do then is actually inside of the car, and that is to remove this bolt here, this 13mm bolt. That is to disconnect the steering column from the steering rack, just so the steering rack can come along with the subframe. So let's remove that now. There we are, that's that bolt removed. I think this actually had a little bit of thread locker on this. That's why it's taken a while to come out. This steering column joint should just lever out the way. There we are. Next thing I'm going to do then is remove the two under trays, of course one on each side, so I can access properly the bolts that hold the rear of the front subframe in place. Now these two under trays are just held in by a bunch of these 10mm plastic nuts, so I'll get all those removed and then these can drop down. Okay, so as you can see, both of those under trays have now been removed, and we have good access to the 3 bolts on either side. And now what I'm going to do is just disconnect a couple of the electrical connectors for the power steering. This one in the middle, I don't think that needs to be disconnected. Just this one here. There we go. And then this big one as well. There we are. They can just be tucked up out the way. We've also got these securing clips for the cabling. So we just pop that off. There we are, that's that removed. And a similar sort of story for this side as well. Just disconnect this ABS sensor. And now I'm pretty sure that it's just nuts and bolts holding this subframe in place now. So I'm going to start with the track rods and the drop links. This drop link's actually already loose. So I removed that when I took the engine out, so I can just swing out the way. Let's get this track rod in bolted though. There we are, give this a few taps. There we are. Not too bothered about damaging these because, like I said, they are getting replaced. There we are, that same done on that side. Now if your Mini does have xenon headlights, you are going to want to disconnect this level sensor as well. It's just held in by one 10mm bolt. Next then I'm going to unbolt these wishbone rear bushes, just held in by this 16mm bolt, obviously one on each side. And now it's time to remove these bolts at the front, again 16mm, one on either side. Now I don't know if the subframe is going to want to drop. Obviously there is those 6 bolts at the back holding it in place still, but I have just put some ramps in place just in case it does want to drop down slightly. You know, it's just going to give it a little bit extra support so it's not putting too much pressure on those rear bolts. But let's get these 2 bolts removed, and then it is only those 6 bolts at the back. Yes, it is trying to drop slightly. But yeah, it's not going to drop all the way because, like I said, those bolts at the back are holding it in place. Okay, so of course I do have a jack in the middle of the subframe just so it can't drop down as soon as I remove these bolts. So again, they are all 16mm. Final bolt removed. I'll try slowly lower it down. I think it's coming. Yeah, that's through. It should all now be loose. It's out the way. It's out the way. Yeah, it should be loose. I'll just lower it down onto those ramps. Okay, so as we can see, the entire subframe assembly is now away from the car. Now let's inspect the damage. So, as I mentioned before, the majority of the rust was on these uprights here. As you can see, the factory paint is all flaking off. And I think this is the most common area for, complete failure, for these cracking. So, yeah, in terms of the rest of the subframe, it's actually not too bad, but I am definitely glad that I have removed this. Like I said, we are going to be replacing the wishbones, these rear bushes, anti-roll bar bushes, and also the track rods and track rod ends as well. Now, before I begin disassembling the subframe, essentially just removing the power steering rack, the anti-roll bar, these bushes, and the wishbones, what I'm going to do is actually pop these boots off and then remove the track rod assemblies, because it's just going to be a lot easier while it is still bolted to here as opposed to trying to do it when it's off the subframe. So yeah, I'm just going to remove this boot, get a spanner to release the track rod from the steering rack, and then I should be able to twist it off then. So let's just pop this securing clip off. These are one-time use only clips. There we are. Remove this clamp at the end as well. Just slide off. We should be able to slide the boot back. Now we can get onto the flats to release the track rod itself. So the biggest spanner that I have is a 32mm. Is it going to be bigger than that? Yes, it is. So I'm just going to use this pipe wrench. There we are. That's that crack loose. This entire assembly should twist off now. That's one track rod assembly removed. Okay, so of course I need to do the same to the other side, but because the flats are too far in, so the steering rack is too far over to the other side, I'm going to have to rotate this shaft to reveal the flats. Don't worry, I have marked this up. I have put a pen mark just so I know where this has to go back together. There we are. And there's that side track rod assembly removed. So the steering rack itself looks like it's just had in by 3 E14 bolts. With those removed, it should lift off. There we are. Now we'll unbolt the anti-roll bar, just 4 18mm bolts. And they should not be that tight.
You got nuts on the bottom?
I don't think so. No.
Oh, it rusted in, I'll bet. You know what WD-40 was invented for anyway?
Water displacement.
Yeah, for the inside the rockets before they took off, stop ice forming.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So people use it for oil, but it's not an oil, is it?
No. Yeah, it must just be rusty because these ones aren't that tight. Hopefully they should undo now. I wasn't trying to get them out under the car. You wouldn't do it, would you? That's the anti-roll bar removed. Now it's just the 2 nuts that hold the wishbones to the subframe. Well, that's part of the wishbone. No, I can't hear a thing now. Okay then, so here is how we are looking. As you can see, the front subframe is now entirely stripped down. So as you just saw, I removed those 2 front wishbones. Also removed these bush carriers from the wishbones as well. Essentially just melted these out. Came out quite nicely. I will be replacing the bushes inside of here. Like I said, I'm going to be upgrading them to some polyurethane ones, so that'll all be at a later date. I've also went ahead and removed the drop links from the car along with the hubs as well. Going to be completely stripping those down, you know, giving them a good clean up, giving them a coat of paint to make them look a little bit nicer. And that's pretty much it then. That is where we are going to leave today. As you can see, everything is all now ready to be prepped, stripped down, and then given a good coat of paint. Once we've done that, once we have all of the parts to reassemble this thing, it can all go back on the car. Okay then, so that is another job done, another job ticked off the list. Like I said, I still have a good amount of work left to do with this lot, but it's going to look so good once it goes back on the car. And that will pretty much be the entire front end now refreshed. As always guys, if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a like, show some support, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in that next one. Peace!